All right, so welcome. My name is Stephen Wiley. I'm the Director for Administrative Services here at Carolina Housing. Today we're going to talk about housing selection for the upcoming 2024-2025 academic year, answer some questions around for those students on the housing priority wait list, set some expectations, and just create an opportunity for you to ask any questions you may have. We know there's lots of unanswered questions out there, so we want to take this time to answer those. We kindly ask any questions that you have, you drop them in the Q&A section. We will go through, we will consolidate. I anticipate that we'll get a lot of the same questions, so our moderators will be taking a look at those. We will make sure we get through every questions that we have, all of the questions that we have, and then there'll be an opportunity at the end where we'll provide contact information if there's anything that goes unanswered. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump right in. So our agenda for today, why is there a wait list for housing? What is the priority wait list? What are the next steps? Some important dates and milestones, what to expect moving forward, a list of some resources, and then a Q&A. The focus of this is going to be primarily just kind of giving an overview of what to expect, where we are moving towards, and then answer any questions that you may have. So let's dive right in. All right, so why is there a wait list? Well, it's important to note that this process housing selection and the housing application process is very early in the academic year. We understand that it's early, but this is primarily driven by the off-campus market. And with all the students signing off-campus leases so early, we want to be a part of that so that they can make a decision of on-campus versus off. As a result of it being so early, though, there are a number of things that aren't wrapped up. For example, our student staff, so RAs, RCCs, those live on positions that we have to designate specific spaces for. We haven't wrapped up those processes. So all of those beds are on holding, and the students that are going into those spaces are going through the general room selection process. So essentially, you could have someone who wants to be an RA, has applied to be an RA, they're also going through room selection and taking up essentially 2 spaces. We do have some outstanding RLP assignments, so our residential learning programs, as students are applying to those and being admitted to those programs, those spaces are designated for them. And then once they accept those invitations to join, we move them out of a general space and into the RLP. We do have some students who will study abroad next academic year in the fall, but those plans are not yet finalized. So they're going through room selection as well to make sure that they have a plan and somewhere to live on campus if those study abroad plans fall through. We also have our housing cancellation process. So we have a number of students who have signed up to live off campus. Maybe they didn't like it because they didn't get an apartment, or they were just trying to finalize their off-campus plans. They wanted a backup. So as they're canceling, we will have a lot of spaces that will open up through the housing cancellation. And then this year's a little bit of a unique year. This is the highest number of applications we've had on-campus housing. And we have the Avery Residence Hall, which will be offline for the next academic year as we start to do renovation work on our campus. So with higher demand and a lower capacity, you're going to have a larger number of students that are starting off on a wait list. I do want to make clear that this is part of our normal process every year. We always receive more housing contracts than we have space available for our returning students. So every year, at some point during room selection, we will run out of beds. So we work through those cancellations and the staff assignments to assign those students that are on the priority wait list and into those spaces. So I know it's a stressful time, but it is a period or a process that we go through every year. So we just want to make sure that that's clear. So what is the priority wait list? Well, you've heard reference to that. The priority wait list is our students who applied by the priority deadline who are on a wait list to receive an on-campus housing assignment. That's our priority wait list. We'll also have a wait list of students who have applied after the priority deadline, which we'll call our normal wait list. And the reason for the two is we want to make sure that we can differentiate those who applied later and those who applied as a priority. It is still our goal to assign everyone on the priority wait list. So that's who we're working to take care of first. So as those cancellations occur, as those staff assignments are made, that's who we're going to take care of first, is those that are on the priority wait list. So next steps, we're going to talk in a little bit about what we're going to be doing moving forward, but what can your student do in the meantime? They can review and update their housing preferences. And what we mean by that is take a look at their buildings as they learn more about on-campus housing maybe they listed a space on North Campus, but instead they'd like to go to Morrison. They can update those preferences, because when we go to assign them off the wait list, that's what we're going to look at. We're going to see what their preferences are, including their roommate groups. The other thing that they should do is take a good long hard look at their roommate groups if they're in a group of more than two. The reality is it's very difficult for us to have a vacant suite to open up that we can accommodate a group of 8. It's much more likely that we'll have roommate pairings open up through vacant doubles. So if they're in a larger group, we encourage them to consider breaking those groups up just so that we can get them assigned quicker. We will try and get those large groups together. It's just unlikely at this point in the process. So we want them to take a look at their housing preferences and make any changes that they can. Important dates and milestones, though. So you may have heard about the housing cancellation dates. So an important date is the first one is the January 12th, and that's where anyone who does not have an assignment can cancel without a penalty. The next one would be the March 1st housing cancellation date, and that's where the cancellation deadline, or that's the date to cancel before the cancellation increases from $300 to 50% of fall rent. So the cancellation dates are as follows. You have your January 12th cancellation date, and that's where anyone can cancel who doesn't have an assignment without a penalty. Up until March 1st, students can cancel with a $300 cancellation penalty. Between March 2nd and July 31st, the cancellation penalty is 50% of fall rent, or if they don't have an assignment, it would be the $300. And then as of August 1st, it increases to 50% of the contract value. So other important dates, though, and I apologize, I see there's a bit of an error. The January 17th reference, that shouldn't be included there, should be below, but that is when the room reassignments go live. There will be an email going out either by tomorrow or beginning of next week that outlines that process. So we won't go into too much detail about that today, but just be on the lookout for that. We also have the RA selection. So we did make reference to that. So the RAs are selected at the end of February, and then students have the option to accept or decline that invitation to be an RA. As we go through that process, we will open up a number of spaces on campus. So that's one of the big ones that we have coming up. And then that March 1st cancellation deadline is where we see our largest cancellation window of up to 1,000 students who will cancel by that deadline. So that's that late February, really early to mid-March when we anticipate to assign the majority of the students that are on the housing wait list. And then I also included in here the first year admissions deadline. That doesn't have a huge impact on returners, but because of our first year live-on requirement, we have to make sure we have enough space to house all of our first year students. So any spaces that we're currently holding for first years, when the admissions deadline passes, we'll have an idea if any of those can be released, or we can reallocate those spaces for upper division students. For example, we hold the top floor of Craig North every year to give us some flexibility with our first year class. If we don't need that space for first year students, we'll reallocate that back to returning students. All right, so what to expect? So based on our current available information, we do anticipate that we'll be able to house everyone who's on the priority wait list. Although we cannot guarantee that, that is our goal. That's what we're working towards. And if anything at any point changes, we will notify the students that are in that priority wait list. Now, to make that happen, we do have to get the cancellations that we anticipate we're going to receive. We use a projection and years of data to see how many we expect we'll have. So that's going to drive the majority of the spaces that are going to open up. Starting in the fall, we will provide a weekly update every Friday to the students who are on the wait list. And that's just to let you know kind of how the wait list is progressing. That's our promise to you, to keep you up to date with information. If anything else changes at any point, we'll notify you that as well. That's also when we would provide updates about upcoming milestones like the RA selection process or cancellation deadline. We will give priority for assignments for those students into vacant doubles that are part of a roommate group. So as we're working through cancellations and assignments, we're looking to also consolidate spaces to accommodate those roommate pairings, because we know how important those are to students. For students who are not part of a roommate group, you'll be assigned based off your building preferences. We talked about earlier, updating that information. But another thing is that due to the nature of the assignment process, we cannot let you know where the student's place in line is. There are lots of factors that go into this process. like if they're in a roommate group, what their building preferences are. If we have a single room that opens up, for example, we won't just take the next person in line, because if someone's asking for a double, we're not going to place them into a single because there's a cost difference in that space. So additionally, and I did not share this, but it has gone out in email communication. If a student is assigned at any point, they will not have to wait for the Friday update. The day that they get an assignment, they'll automatically get an email from us saying that they've been assigned, so they can go on and check that. So we will be moving that process as fast as we can as well. Here's some resources that we have provided to those already. We just want to make you aware of them again. We do encourage individuals that as they're weighing their options, that they're using these resources like the Off-Campus Student Life Office, their website. There's the Off-Campus Housing website, which is a great search tool to look for off-campus housing options. There's the Off-Campus Housing Guide. Carolina Student Legal Services is a great resource as well if students are thinking about signing a lease off campus. They will actually review leases on your behalf. There's a group of attorneys that could do that. Campus Dining, UNC Transportation, Chapel Transit, and the Student Aid and Scholarships. So with all of that, I know there's lots of questions here, so we are going to dive right into those. And then at the end, if you have any specific questions, you can always reach out to our office. So before I begin, the Carolina Housing team that's joining us, is there anyone that has anything that we need to state before we move into the questions? Okay, looks like we're good to go there. All right, so I'm just going to go start through here at the top. The wait list should not be normal because it adds way too much stress. We understand that it adds stress, and it's an unfortunate part of the housing selection process. And I don't mean that as to be dismissive or anything like that. The reality is we have lots of students who just haven't been able to finalize their plans and what they're doing. And we want to make sure that we can get as many students on campus as possible. So the counter to the wait list, if you will, is that we would open up with lots of vacancies, because we will also have students for various reasons who will leave the university that may not know that at this time. They may have a family emergency. They may choose to take an internship, or they need to take a semester off for various reasons. So as all of those things shake out, we do have a wait list of students so that we can get as many students on campus as possible. If we didn't do it that way, another thing that you run into is you have to either do a really late room selection process. There are some institutions that will do it in like June and July, but that doesn't give students an option to look for off-campus housing options if they don't want to wait that long as well. So we understand the stress that it presents itself. We know that it's a challenging time for everyone, but it is something that we have to maintain so that we can get as many students on campus as possible. Is there a priority within the priority wait list? How are students moved off the list? As we talked about, we do look at their housing preferences when spaces come available. We weigh factors like that. If it's a random space, we also look at what is the profile match, using the profile questions in their application. And the reason for that is we want to try and make them not only have an assignment, but we also want to make sure it's as good of a roommate pairing as possible. So we are weighing all of those factors into that. We look at the room type. If it's a super suite, for example, that opens up in Morrison, we don't want to just place any student in that super suite. We want to make sure it's someone who's asked for a super suite, because that space costs more. So we're weighing all of those options as we're making those assignments. Is there a period where an assigned student can cancel without a penalty? And the answer to that is no. Once you submit the housing contract, you are subject to $300 cancellation penalty. We did extend a grace period of time for those who are unassigned, though, for this year. Next is, I applied before the November 26th and didn't get what I wanted. How do I know that I'm on the priority wait list? Well, so if you have an assignment, you're not on the priority wait list. The priority wait list is just for those students who are unassigned. If you're unhappy with your housing assignment, there will be an opportunity to submit a reassignment request, and that process will open up on January 17th. An email will be going out soon that outlines that in more detail. And that email will go out to all students, including those on the priority wait list. Even if we don't get an assignment, will we still have to pay the cancellation fee? If for some reason we cannot assign you, there is no cancellation penalty. If we do not get an assignment after the 17th, will we still have to pay the cancellation fee. So the 17th is not a date in regards to the cancellation process. If a student, for whatever reason, cannot get an assignment, we will not charge them a cancellation fee. If you were a parent of a student in this situation, your kid was in a group with one other person, what would you do? So I can't answer that because everyone's situation is a little bit different. What we do encourage families to do, though, is take a look at all the information that's being provided. I know it's a lot that's coming at you, but we want to provide it as quickly as we can so that you can make a best informed decision for your student and your family. We still feel like we're going to be able to house everyone on the priority wait list. So if you're able to wait that out, then that may be the route you want to go. But we have some families that that's not an option for them. They don't want to wait it out, and that's understandable too. So they're going to start looking for off-campus housing. We also have students who the reality is at this point, you're going to be looking at a double or triple occupancy room. We have very few triples, so there won't be many there. But for those students assigned to a double, they really wanted a private room space. So they're going to start looking for off-campus housing options as well. So all I can say to you is to take the information that is available and make the decision that's best for you and your family. Right, based on what you just explained, it is still not clear what the odds are of a regular waitlisted student to receive a housing assignment. Given supply and demand, can you tell us what to expect? I ask because someone in housing emailed me that we can generally house every student who applies, but it sounds like this is not the case. Okay. So if you're on the regular wait list, meaning you applied after the priority deadline, we won't know what our ability to house you is until after we get past that March 1st cancellation window, because that's our biggest cancellation window. It's probably going to be unlikely that we can house students after that deadline, but until we get to that point and see where our cancellation numbers shake out, we really don't know at this time. If you are a student who applied after the priority deadline, though, I would strongly encourage you to begin doing your research for off-campus housing options, as there's a good chance we won't be able to house you. It's an unfortunate thing, and while we would love to be able to provide housing to everyone, it's just not something that we can do. So if you are on the quote unquote regular wait list, or just really more of the applied after the party deadline, we would encourage you to be looking for off-campus options. How the priority waitlist students select in the room on the time of application they have submitted or by the credit. Okay. So as we said earlier, we don't have a specific place in line for students on the wait list. And if you're on the priority wait list, you will not do any type of self room selection. At this time, our staff is going to be making your assignment. So as cancellations come in and as we assign our student staff positions, when those spaces open up, we'll be going to the wait list and assigning students. We're generally going to try and use the order of the room selection time slot to keep in the general theme of that. But we'll also be weighing options like room type preferences, building preferences, and roommate groups. So for example, when a vacant double opens up, we will prioritize a roommate pair for that space over individual. And the reason for that is we have lots of individual spaces that open up. We don't oftentimes have as many of the vacant double rooms. So to make sure we can honor those roommate requests, we'll prioritize those when those spaces come open. Where can I specifically waitlist for a certain room type while I apply for the reassignment? Well, you can update your housing preferences to get in line for another space, or to get in line for a specific room type. So say you want a single, although it's very unlikely you'll get a single room off of the priority wait list, you can update your preferences for a single room, and then you're more likely to get into a single room working through room reassignment. So like I said, we'll send more information about that process to those that are on the priority wait list, those that are on wait list, and those that have a housing assignment. There's another about where are you on the priority wait list? We've explained that there's not a specific place in line. Would a student have a better chance of getting a room assignment if they do not designate a roommate? Not necessarily, because our goal is to house everyone our goal is to assign everyone who is on the priority wait list. So having a designated roommate or not doesn't change your chances of getting an on-campus housing assignment. It can change the speed of which you receive an assignment, because oftentimes it's easier for us to assign onesie twosies here and there. or an individual student because we have more individual spaces opening up, but we will work to take care of all the roommate pairs as well. Should we split out the group of four up? Should we split out group of four up then for a higher chance assignment? So in this question here, they're asking is if you have a group of four, should you break that up to try and have a better chance at an assignment? And what we encourage students to do is split up roommate groups into pairs. So if it is a group of four, they're more than welcome to stay as a group of four. We ultimately, though, will split them up into pairs if we need to make the assignment. So our goal is to still assign everyone. It's just the speed at which we can make an assignment. So if they are in a group of four, they may sit there for some time as we try and identify two double rooms in either a suite or on the same floor, especially in like a corridor style building. Those are just harder to accommodate. So it'll ultimately come to a point where we split them up into roommate pairs if we need to get them assigned. My student's preferred roommate got a single space, and now my student has neither a room nor a roommate. What is the chance that my student can get a room and also live with her preferred roommate? Those can be challenging. There are very few singles within suites on campus. So the preferred roommate living in the same suite, if they're on a corridor style floor, they can just try and get into a room on the same floor. So they could preference in their housing assignment that they want to go to that specific building. But it's hard for us to match up a student who has a roommate as in a single if they're going to be in a double. Is it better to be in a roommate group or be assigned a random roommate in terms of getting a room, or is there no difference? We've talked about that one. My student was looking to get into a single and is not in a roommate group. Is there anything she should do with her profile to make it easier to place her in a double if a single does not become available? No, the likelihood of a student getting a single off the priority wait list is very slim. So anyone that has preferenced that, we will try to honor those, but the reality is we're going to be looking for double rooms to make an assignment for them. What is the latest that a student on the priority wait list could find out that she doesn't have housing? And at that point, what options would be available? So there's not a specific point in time as of right now. So we're going to work to assign students. The biggest driver is going to be that March 1 timeframe. So by mid-March, we'll have a good idea of how long it's going to take to get students assigned or when we'll be able to get them assigned. So if at any point, though, as we're running these numbers every week, we feel that we're not going to be able to house students, we will notify them at that time. We want to make sure that if for some reason we can't house someone, that we let them know as soon as possible so they can explore off-campus options. Now, as far as to what that means for the off-campus housing market, some of that will depend. If they're looking at the handful of apartments that are really geared towards students that are right next to campus, those options are probably filled or nearing that now. But there are, from what I understand, there's always options in the off-campus market. They just may be a little bit further from the campus that are not in walking distance. Is there any preference given to students with housing accessibility accommodations currently on the wait list? If you have an accommodation, I recommend that you contact our office directly so that we can look through your specific situation. Housing accommodations can vary quite a bit. So more specifically, we'd rather just speak to you in person. So if you don't mind giving our office a call or sending us an email so we can look into your specific situation. Why do you not prioritize current freshmen who have less of a chance to understand off-campus housing? Well, that's a good question. So our priority has always gone seniors, juniors, sophomores, then first years. And when you're able to house everyone, that question doesn't really come into play. So we still feel we'll be able to house everyone that has applied by the priority deadline. We don't have a large number of rising juniors and seniors. And there are some circumstances for those students that really pertain to needing on-campus housing as well. So it is something that if we continue to have large wait lists, or if we get to the point where we cannot continuously house students, we will evaluate that as we do every year. I've heard of other schools putting students up in a hotel while working to place students in residence halls. Would you consider this as a last resort? We are nowhere near the point where we would evaluate that. We're still very early on in our process. We have not used hotels to make accommodations in the past. I know some off-campus properties have done that, but we're nowhere near that at this point. How do you prioritize the order wait list? We've discussed that. What happens if housing was included as part of your scholarships and you are not assigned a room? So generally with financial aid, so you need to look at your specific financial aid award package and see if there's any specific requirements. But for those students who receive aid in the form of loans, grants, scholarships, things like that, generally aid is dispersed to the university, and any bill that you have with the university is paid, and then everything after that is given back in the form of a refund. So generally, you can use those refunded funds towards your room rent off campus. If we choose to stay in the wait list and wait until the end of summer, no room is given to us. Why do we lose 300? Well, we talked about that. There's no cancellation penalty if you're not assigned. If you are unable to accommodate students on the wait list, would you be able to offer them any other amenities that may make living off campus more accessible for everyone? I think it'd be helpful for the university to offer something to students who were diligent enough to apply by the party deadline who they were unable to accommodate. We will continue to evaluate those options if at some point our ability to house students changes. What is the probability that people on the party wait list will not get assigned? I can't give you a percentage chance. Our goal, and based on the information we have, is that we'll get everyone assigned that's on the priority wait list. So if that at any point changes, we'll notify students. Has it ever happened that Carolina did not have enough housing? This past year was the first year that we weren't able to house everyone. So we weren't able to house some of our returning students who applied after April, and we weren't able to house some of the incoming transfer students. This was the first time, and I've been here over 10 years now. So it's a very rare occurrence, but it is something that we'll continue to monitor, but we're not at that point at this time. Or we do not believe we're at that point at this time. Is it more likely that you get a room if you're a single or a double? I'm going to assume that you mean like an individual versus a roommate. And we've talked around that one. That's there's not really a difference. It just impacts how quickly you might get assigned. How much of a disadvantage is it to be paired with a roommate rather than be a single? We've discussed that. For single room requests, would you consider pairing them with other single room requesters if there were a double available? If we get to a point where we have vacant doubles and we have no more roommate pairings, we will obviously put 2 individuals into that space. How is it students who were lucky enough to have a higher lottery number for housing assignments were given the courtesy of refusal without financial penalty, but those who got in off the wait list were... Show me this one correctly. So I think this question is here. I could be wrong. So if this is your question, please clarify on the question there. How is it that students who were lucky enough to have a higher lottery number for housing assignments were given the courtesy of refusal without financial penalty, but those who get in off of the priority wait list after January 2nd don't? It isn't equitable. So if a student has an assignment, then they're subject to that cancellation penalty. So those who selected a room still have to pay the cancellation penalty. When the student reassignment is submitted, if we do not like that, can we keep the previous option? So the way a reassignment works is when you submit a reassignment request, you only request what you're asking for, and we will only reassign you to what you're asking for. So for example, if you say, I want to move to a double in Morrison, that's all we'll place you in. So there shouldn't be a reason that you want to cancel that reassignment. Prior to move-in though, with room reassignments, reassignments are automatic. So there's not an option to cancel those so that we can expedite move those along. Is it possible to get a double with a specific roommate? Yes, we will work to assign roommate pairs into vacant double rooms. Would a student on the wait list have a better chance of getting a room assignment if they do not designate a roommate? We've answered that one in full detail. Will students be applied? Yes, so our goal is to still assign roommate pairings as spaces come available. What if I won't get housing and there are not many places to rent? Then what? Thanks. So everyone's going to have kind of a unique answer to that. If you want to kind of talk through your options, we recommend that you contact our office. We don't manage the off-campus housing market, so there are resources there that can help you identify possible off-campus options, and they're in the slide that's shown. But from there, you would just need to research those options on your own. What happens if housing was included as part of your scholarship? We've answered that one. If you've applied for a quad and are on the priority wait list, should students update preferences for a double? So we don't have any quads on campus. I'm assuming maybe you're thinking of like the 4-bedroom apartment in Ram Village. If you are, then you should update your preferences because it's unlikely you'll be able to get to an apartment off of the priority wait list. You're more likely to get that through a room reassignment. How do you select students to obtain housing and then identify them to be on the wait list? We've talked about that in detail as well. For those on the priority wait list, how likely is it they will be paired with their progressive roommate? We've also talked about that quite a bit, as opposed to being put in a random roommate. And that's not date specific. I joined a roommate group after one of the members received her assignment. Will I be able to room with them even if I'm on the wait list since they told me they have an empty bed in their room? So there are no vacancies. There may be like an empty bed in their suite, but that's most likely a staff room, like an RA room that has not been assigned. The broader question though is if you join a roommate group of someone who's already assigned, we will monitor but we can't guarantee that you'll be placed into that space. So they can't just pull you in. The roommate group and the ability to pull folks in, that's only good during the room selection process. Once we get to the wait list, that doesn't prioritize you into that opening. We receive a fair amount of financial aid, and if we are forced to seek off-campus rentals, we will be unable to afford or send our child who's going through this as a second-year junior. Why weren't upperclassmen given priority? So we actually do the housing process in the order of which the students are by their academic standing. So if they were a second-year junior, they should have had some standing. They can contact our office if they have some specific questions. If an upperclassman has a room assignment, can someone on the priority wait list request to be their roommate? Yes, they can. It'd be best to contact our office so we can talk through the specifics around what that looks like, because it might be through a room swap or a room reassignment. What is the latest date that someone on the priority list could find out that there is no on-campus available for her? This definitely factors in the decision to pursue on-campus housing. There's not a drop dead date. We will continue to monitor that. We'll provide weekly updates about where we are with housing. If at any point we feel that we're not going to be able to house students, we will notify them at that time. As we've stated before, the biggest driver for us is going to be that early March timeframe when we wrap up the staff selection and our housing cancellation window, because that's when we see the majority of our cancellations. When is the deadline to sign up for the halls? So there is not a deadline. There was a priority deadline to participate in room selection or to be on the priority wait list. That was November 26th. If you have not applied at this time, I would highly encourage you to look for off-campus options at this time. What would happen if I decided to continue with on-campus housing, but I did not get a housing assignment and was not notified until late spring when all of the off-campus leases are signed? Is the university responsible? So the university is not responsible in the sense of identifying housing for you. If you've applied for on-campus housing, we'll do everything that we can to assign you to a space, and our priority is those on the priority wait list. If we cannot identify housing for you on campus, though, it would be your responsibility to look for off-campus options. ARS has granted my student a single room accommodation. If you have an accommodation, I recommend that you contact our office directly, as we manage that process individually for each student. Is this issue for all students except freshmen? Does sophomores have a greater opportunity than juniors and seniors? So the only housing that is guaranteed on campus is for our incoming first-year students as part of our live-on requirement. And then from there, we have a returner selection process for sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And that's the process we just wrapped up. Or I apologize, we did not wrap up. We wrapped up the room selection portion of the housing assignment process. It's very frustrating for students already submitted the housing application by the park deadline and find out on the room selection day and time there is no room. UNC should hold a high standard instead of having all of these confusing processes for our students who submitted applications on time by the priority deadline. We understand the frustration that comes with the room selection process and knowing that there's a point where we will run out of spaces. Unfortunately, though, we're not we don't know exactly when that point is going to be. And I know that sounds crazy, but every year we also have a number of students who will get a room selection time slot and ultimately not select a room because they didn't see what they wanted. So as we're going through that process, because it is live, we have to see how many students get through it. So once we run out of spaces, we notify those students and then we move them all to the party wait list and we assign the students from there. So room selection is only one piece of the pie, if you will. There is still the room assignment process where we assign students off the housing priority wait list. Would you consider pairing single room requesters with a double? Yes, we talked about that as well. Our list is skipping around, so I want to make sure I'm covering everything. If I submit a reassignment request in January for Ram Village before we will likely get our first assignment off the wait list, do I receive an original and then a new reassignment, or do I just get assigned based on my reassignment request? So if you we'll go into more specifics in the email that comes out about the reassignment process, but if you are a student who wants the single or a Ram Village space, those spaces we will fill those spaces with the reassignment request process. So you can still submit a reassignment request even if you don't have an assignment. If we assign you through the reassignment request process, then you're no longer on the wait list, your assignment's taken care of, and you just keep the space that you received during the reassignment request process. I don't want to go into too many specifics for that here today, because we do have an email that's going out that's going to outline all of that. Some scholarships require that a student live on campus. What happens if we cannot accommodate them? Please feel free to contact our office and we can discuss that. But if you've applied by the priority deadline, it is still our goal to get you assigned, and we'd be happy to talk to you about the specifics there. How many people were on the priority wait list last year? So the priority wait list last year, there was around 600 students. This year's a little bit larger. We have more students who've applied, and we have a few less beds, but we were able to take care of all of those students last year that were on the priority wait list. And we also got through a number of students who applied after. But this year, we still feel confident we're going to house everyone who applies by the priority deadline. We're just unsure about those who applied after. We've talked about the roommate pairings and matching up, so I'll skip that one. I think in the future, you should make this info to current freshmen before the housing deadline and on your Zoom sessions with parents. Many of us had no idea that this was a possibility for our rising sophomores. We'll make note of that, and I do appreciate that, that recommendation. Is there any way that if someone from a group drops, it is possible for someone from the wait list to be assigned to that room and both make it clear? No, we don't just assign students. We don't want to create a situation where somebody's kind of jumping the line, if you will. We are going to assign off housing preferences, and kind of somewhat in the order of the room selection time slots. My student's roommate received a room assignment, but my student was put on the wait list. What should the two of them do to try and get a room together? If they're trying to get a room together, they need to make sure they're part of the same roommate group. As we're making the assignments, they could submit a reassignment request if they like, but we'll also work to try and get them into a space if that opens up, or we'll try and get them into the same building where they could work through like a room swap and things like that to get matched up. Information around that will also be in that reassignment email that's going out. If my student doesn't get a room, or parking accommodations made for students if they have to live off campus. So Carolina Housing does not manage parking services. That would be a question they would need to contact parking services around what parking availability looks like. If there's a double, so if there's double the amount of people on the wait list from this year to last year, and you were unable to provide everyone housing last year, how do you expect to accommodate this? So we were able to accommodate everyone on the priority wait list last year, and a large number of students who were not on the priority wait list but applied well after the priority deadline. So that's how we're able to feel confident that that's how we're able to feel that we're going to be able to house the students that are on the priority wait list. What does it mean, general order, time slots already assigned? So the room selection time slots that students were given for those on the priority wait list, if they were going to go through room selection, that's generally the order that we're going to try and make their assignments in. Was there nothing done to accommodate Avery being closed? So Avery is a scheduled construction project that's been in the works for a couple years. As we continue to monitor our campus and meet the demands of our students, Unfortunately, there are going to be times where we have to take buildings down, and Avery is the one that's slated next for construction project. So we're going to so that building currently is not accessible. It's going to be made to accessible building. We're going to add an elevator, some lounge space, and also add central heat and air because that building currently has window units. General order, the time slots already assigned. So the room selection time slots that students were given for room selection, that's the general order that we're going to try and make the assignments on. Is Ram Village not an option for the priority wait list? Ram Village generally is used in the room reassignment process and not for those on the wait list. So because that space would not have been available during room selection at the later rounds. So we use the room reassignment process for that. It looks like if students have to move off campus, will they have an opportunity to obtain housing back on campus for the next year? Yes, so every year students can apply for on-campus housing. We have students who move off and then come back to campus. That's not uncommon. Where can we hear about when these renovations will be made to buildings in the future so we can predict situations such as these? Well, we did in all of our communication, or we did in our communication when we went live with housing selection this year and in the application noted that Avery Hall was going to be offline. So before we start that process, we do have that information out there. So if we have any future projects, we'll make sure that that information is available as well. That looks like the majority of the questions. So in the chat, you'll see some information about the off-campus housing website as well as RLPs. I would encourage you, if you have any questions, to please drop them in now. If you have questions, you can also contact our website. If you want more specifics, you're more than welcome to give us a call as well. We are here to help. If you contact us between 8 and 5, Monday through Friday, we're here, except for the holidays. I do want to just note, though, that I understand this is a stressful time, and it's a stressful time on college campuses everywhere. We want to house as many students who want to live on campus as possible. So we're going to make sure that we can squeeze everyone in. There are going to be students who cancel for various reasons, and this happens every year. So instead of those spaces sitting vacant, we want to make sure that we can get as many students assigned on campus as possible. I know generally there's a feeling that we don't have enough beds. But we actually have quite a few beds on our campus, and generally we're able to take care of everyone who wants housing. Now, when you take a building offline for renovations, that's going to impact that. And long term, it doesn't help in the immediate future, but it does help in the long term. So, we want to make sure that we're clear. We provide as much information as possible. If there's any point in time where we think we can't house students, we're going to let you know that as well. But we want to take as proactive approach as possible so that you're informed with the information so that we can get as many students assigned. But if for some reason we can't assign someone, we want to make them aware of that as well. So we understand this is a stressful time. We appreciate your patience. I know that it's a challenging time, especially with the holidays coming up and finals and everything else that's going on. But we want to make sure that you're aware of what's going on, and we do everything that we can to get everyone housed that wants to live on campus. If an upperclassman has a room assignment, can someone on the priority wait list request to be their roommate now? We've talked about that in some detail about what the process is there in computer roommate group, and we'll work to match them up as best we can. So we've got a couple more minutes here. I apologize for the long-windedness of some of this, and I apologize. We really just wanted to give you all an opportunity to ask any questions that you have, and so that we can answer them and be as upfront with this information as possible. Just a couple talking points that I want to remind everyone. Starting January 12th, if your student is on the priority wait list, we will give them a weekly update about how the wait list is progressing. So it won't say where they're specifically in line, but it'll say our wait list has been narrowed down to this. In addition to that, if your student is assigned at any time, we will give them an email as well, letting them know that they've been assigned, that they can check their assignment online in the milestones portal. What we do encourage students to do now, though, is take a look at their preferences, update their preferences, especially as they learn more about campus and maybe they want to change things around. There will be an email forthcoming around the room reassignment request process and room swaps. We encourage students to read through those as well so they have that information. But once again, we want to thank you for your patience through this process. We know it's a stressful time, but we're here to help as much as we can. what is the chance of getting the roommate you want if you are on the priority wait list? So we can't say that specifically. I know last year we were able to take care of everyone that was on the priority wait list and get their roommate matches together. Um, so we will do all that we can to honor those roommate requests. We will work on consolidating spaces. It's a bit of a puzzle for us on the back end, but we try to do everything we can to make sure that students are assigned with their preferred roommate if they have one. Thank you so much for the information session. You're welcome. Happy to help. So can no one from the waitlist participate in the reassignment process since you, that's not correct. So if you're on the priority waitlist, you can still submit a room reassignment request. Got a little bit of time here, so maybe we'll dive into this a little bit. So room reassignments are generally students who are wanting to go into what are more high demand spaces like apartments, single style rooms, or maybe they want a specific like super suite, or they just don't want the building they're in, they've changed their mind. The room reassignment request, every student who has a housing contract can submit a reassignment request. Priority will go to those who have applied by the priority deadline until they're all assigned. And then once we get out of the, once everyone off the priority deadline has been assigned, then those that are after will work on their assignments. But say, for example, you've applied by the priority deadline. Unfortunately, you were able to get a room, but you really want to live in a Morrison Super Suite. So you can submit a reassignment request and we will assign those Morrison Super Suites as they come open. And then, so that way you're not at a disadvantage. What we don't want to do is singles, for example, are always used in the room reassignment process if any come available. What we don't want to do is create a situation that somebody's on the wait list waiting for a chance to get a single room and they can't submit a reassignment request. So what we let them do is anyone who's applied for housing, whether you have an assignment or not, can get on the reassignment request wait list because we do those in the order in which the request is received. So it's not done by academic standard or anything like that. But that way you're not putting somebody who's on the wait list waiting for a space at a disadvantage of receiving one of those rooms. Is there a commitment time frame to accept the housing when granted? Just don't want to miss the opportunity to break. No, if we assign you to a space, that's your assignment. We won't do any assignments until we come back after the first of the year because we want to create as many opportunities as we can through room consolidation to make sure that we've got some space for roommate pairings, but also we don't want you to worry about checking your email over the winter break holiday for an assignment. Go enjoy the time with your families. If you're traveling, safe travels. So we won't be doing any movement there. Ram Village is not typically an option for those on the priority wait list. That is correct. Ram Village typically is only given to those on the reassignment request wait list. Thank you for the session. Really appreciate how you handled such grace. All the best. Thank you so much. Thank you for your patience, everyone. When the student reassignment is submitted, if we do not like that, can we keep the previous option? So with the reassignment request, as a reminder, we talked about it earlier, but when you submit a reassignment request, you list the specific buildings and room types you want, and we will only reassign you to what you're asking for. So we're not placing you in a space you don't want necessarily. In an effort of getting through reassignments as quickly as we can and honoring as many requests as possible. If it's before move-in, reassignments are automatic. So when you submit the request and we can reassign you, it's automatic. After move-in is when we move to an optional reassignment. Since you've already moved in, many students don't necessarily want to move, so we give you the option to accept or decline the reassignment. I'm not seeing any new questions here. Oh, here we go. The list goes generally in order of the selection time slots. Can you give a breakdown of how many time slots were there? Went to the wait lists. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but so the time slot piece is a little unique in that you have students with time slots who are pulled into roommate groups. So they never use their time slot, but they have an assignment. So generally, I don't have a breakdown available of how many time slots were how many students who didn't receive an assignment had a time slot, because we also have some students who just chose not to participate in room selection for various reasons. Got 8 more minutes, so please feel free to drop those questions in. What specific suggestions do you have for out-of-state students who are unfamiliar with the area and are still meeting people? So obviously get involved on campus, talk to their RA, and maybe they can try and attend some of the floor programming or hall programming to get a chance to meet more students. In regards to finding off-campus housing, if they want to explore that option, I would encourage them to use the off-campus housing website as it's a great search tool. There's also a tool in there where students can identify roommates that are searching for roommates. There's some messaging opportunities if they're still looking to meet someone. Um, there's lots of opportunities on campus to get to meet people. So, for them, it's just taking advantage of that. But if they're looking for off-campus housing, the off-campus housing website is a great resource. Thank you for answering your questions. So many questions. It's very well organized. Thank you so much. Great job, webinar. Thank you so much. The WhatsApp, if you don't mind giving the question about who manages the WhatsApp, if you don't mind giving our office a call or sending us an email more specifically, we can look into that a little bit. Thank you. I'm glad I was able to help put a more of you, a few of you at ease. If my student and his roommate had the last time slots, do you feel like they would be unable to be housed together being at the end of the wait list? No, so like I said before, we still feel, our goal is to assign everyone who applied by the priority wait list. If at any point that changes, we'll notify students. Um, but we still feel with the cancellations, we anticipate that we'll be able to get everybody assigned. And we also have all of those staff rooms that have to be assigned as well, because we have a number of students who will ultimately be RAs that went through room selection because they don't know. So they're essentially taking 2 spaces as well. So we'll work through that. If anything changes, we'll let folks know, and that weekly updates will be very crucial in just kind of giving you an idea of what the progress looks like. Can you please clarify what it means to put into the reassignment list if still don't have housing? So yes, the reassignment request wait list is open to everyone. It's really, a lot of times it's where students will request to get into what are more high demand spaces. There is an email that'll be coming in the next couple days that outlines that process, but everyone can request it. If my student ultimately wants a single room, she should go ahead and apply for a room reassignment now. The reassignment request form will not open up until January 17th, so they can't apply for it now. We've got 5 minutes left, so I'll answer any questions that we have. Our contact information for our office is in there. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy to help. I'm sure some have already departed, but I just want to remind folks that our office is going to be closed from December 25th, and then we'll reopen on January 2nd. So if you reach out to us during that time frame, you will not be able to get up with anyone. It is a university holiday, so the office is closed. But we will be open the week prior to that. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We'll be happy to answer them. We've got 4 minutes left. I'm going to stop sharing. We still have about 75 participants in here. What is the last date for room selection? Looks like here. Would a student's chance of getting housing increase if they request an RLP instead of general housing? So the way the RLP process works, if they apply to be in an RLP and they're invited to that program, and they accept the invitation, they're automatically placed into one of the RLP designated spaces. So as an upper division student, their options would be the blue program or the Pride Place program. If they're interested in either of those, I highly recommend they take a look at those on our website. And if they're interested, go ahead and submit that application in the My Housing portal. Is group of 2 part of a time slot, or they put in a room selection first? Will students be able to find out which time slots? So the time slot was emailed to them. It doesn't really mean a whole lot at this point because they're not going through self-selection. But if a group of 2, so they'll each have a time slot appointment, and we'll work to assign them generally in the order of those time slots. And what we mean by that is if we have students who went through room selection and chose not to select a space, they'll get assigned at the end so that we can take care of the students who were not able to get a space during room selection. I'm gonna have to drink a lot of water after all this talking. Sounds as though pairs may have a better chance of being placed. Is this right? All right, it sounds as though pairs may have a better chance at being placed. Is this right? And does the north/south campus preference make any difference? North or south campus doesn't make a difference in speed or anything like that. There are more, the beds are about evenly distributed. And the issue of the pairs having a better chance, no, everyone has an equal chance. It's just it may impact the speed. So what we say by that is if, for example, a vacant double comes open in, say, Carmichael, I will first look to put a pair of students in that space because it's harder to accommodate pairs than it is an individual. Oftentimes we get lots of individual spaces across campus, so those are easy to take care of. It's when you have roommate pairs, they're more limited, so we have to prioritize them for any of the vacant doubles that we have. What was the last time slot that was assigned? It was on Tuesday, the 5th. I will be an upcoming junior, and when I attend Chapel Hill next fall, I plan on signing the dorm living form. I'm also wondering if the C-STEP would give me an edge. So it sounds like you're an incoming transfer student as part of the C-STEP program. I am new to this and would appreciate some guidance. So I would recommend that you contact our office. This is generally geared towards more of our returning student process. For anyone as a transfer, looks a little bit different for next year. So please feel free to give us a call and we can kind of talk through that. We are aware of the coming C-STEP program and things like that. So we'll be happy to answer those questions. So we've got 1 minute left. I just want to thank you again for your patience and all of this, and I appreciate your grace as we work through it. It's been very pleasant talking on the phone. So if you have questions, though, please feel free to contact us. You can email us. You can give our office a call. I also want to thank my colleagues that are on this call with me, helping me get through this. So Matt, Riley, Jordan, as they're in the background here, helping answer some of your questions directly. I see that quite a few of them were answered, but they're also helping point people in the right direction with some of those links. So once again, I want to thank everyone for attending. This has been I hope this was extremely helpful. I hope it also puts some of you at ease. I know this is a stressful time. It's everyone wants to live on campus and we want to get as many of you on campus as we can. We just have to work through our processes and we want you to be aware of what those processes are going to look like. So moving forward, you'll get the weekly updates on Friday if you're on the wait list, and then just please be on the lookout for our email. I also want to take this time to put a plug in for our social media channels. If you're not following us there, please do so. Parents that are on this call, there's also a Carolina Housing newsletter that you can get. It is a monthly newsletter that goes out with general information. So if you haven't signed up for that, please do so. Information around that can be found on our website as well. So I just want to thank you all again and hope you all have a great and happy holidays. And if you're doing any traveling, safe travels and enjoy.